Hello everyone! It's Thursday, 11 a.m. and here I am, showing up for you, for myself, for everyone. And today's topic is actually so huge, but I'm gonna try to keep it short. I don't promise that because this is my favorite topic actually. But if you watching me live, give me some thumbs up. If you watching in replay, send me some heart. And I'm really happy to have you here. Thank you for showing up. Thanks. So today's topic is about gut microbiome. And why gut microbiome? Why gut in general? Well, if you notice, this group is called In Gut We Trust. And in general, the banner was saying that let's make every meal a gut-friendly meal. So today's live, I'm gonna explain a little bit more what I do believe about gut and what you need to know as the basic understanding how the body works. And I am so excited to be the one who's gonna talk about this because, to be honest with you, the gut health is such a huge topic right now for the for for the medical society. So it's like the hottest topic of this year, and there's a reason for that because this is exactly what works. Like we get to used to go to the doctor with a certain problem. Let's say, oh, I suspect that I have a thyroid issue, or I think my liver is not working properly. Oh, maybe some people are not even aware of that. They just have a symptoms, right? And then they go and they're like, I have no idea what's wrong with me, so let's find out. And what the doctors usually do, they assess the information and they say, oh, you have a liver problem, or you may have a heart problem, or you may have pre-diabetes or stuff like this. And then they start treating it. But the thing is that for any of the chronic disease, there's never one cause. There is always a root causes, we call them. So the roots usually go to the places that you would never think about. Like most of the roots of most of the chronic problems, chronic issues and chronic diseases go into gut. So let's talk about gut. This is the main topic, right? So I call this live gut microbiome, and I would like to begin with that. What is microbiome? Well, the microbiome is the microorganisms that live in our gut. We also refer it as gut flora because it is very much like a forest with all of this wonderful, interesting life is going on. And until we never actually as a society, I mean, and as a medicine also, just recently start looking into this microbiome as a resort for restoring health. And so it turned out to be recent studies have shown that every person has a very unique gut microbiome. It means that we have different sets of bacteria and microbes and every human is different. It's basically like fingerprints. So by the gut microbiome, we can tell what kind of person is this, and that is wonderful. And there's even two people like twins. They might look alike, but they will never have the same microbiome. So this is fascinating to me, you know. So what are these microorganisms doing there? And why did we allow them to be there? It's funny because when I talk about microbes at my life classes, I can see people are listening really closely because we tend to believe that we need to get rid of all of the bacteria, all of the microbes. And that belief has been created by this way that humanity treated diseases. Like at the end of 19th century, we realized that bacteria was responsible for many infectious diseases. I mean, all of the infectious diseases based on bacteria, right? And then we tend to believe that all of the bacteria is bad. And then we declared a war on bacteria and said everyone, like, hey, you need to wash your hands. We need to put chlorine in our water to make sure that our water is not does not contain any bacteria. We need to sanitize everything. But the truth is that we cannot sanitize everything because we're not sanitized. We have a wonderful living world inside of us. So the recent studies have shown that each person have about 100 trillion microorganisms in their gut, just in the gut. But we actually have them all over us. We have our skin microbiome. We have our vaginal microbiome. And of course, we have a gut microbiome, as it's the most populated part of our body. And you can see how excited I am about that. And why gut microbiome is the most important one to me, because I love gut, is because if you can balance the gut microbiome, actually all the other microbiomes are going to be balanced out as well. And it's true for vaginal microflora, and it's true for the skin microflora, and for any other microbiomes that are out there. And actually, it's been believed that probably like the womb and the ovaries are not containing any bacteria, but recent studies have shown that they do, and so nothing is sterile. And also our brain is not sterile. We also have bacteria living in our brain. And actually some bacteria can be even very controlling. So let's move forward. So how do we acquire those microbes? And well, actually we get it from our mothers when we born. And we acquire that microbiome by going through the process of being born. And so we get those first bacteria from our mother's vaginal flora, and that creates like a beginning of our microflora. So that's probably why so many babies have this like colitis, when they drink milk, is because like the microbiome is still kind of like creating, in the process of creation. So they don't really have that much enzymes going on yet. And actually it is extremely important to feed the babies with breastfeeding, because through that contact with mother's skin, they acquire more of the necessary microbes that they need to break down that milk. And it is shown that 90% of babies' microbiome contains of bifidobacteria, which is also coming from the milk. What else? So baby is growing little by little, right? And then we start giving certain foods, and then baby exposed to a different outside world and inside of the house, right? And all of the things have bacteria on it. So the baby is exposed to that, and its immune system is being trained to see what is dangerous and what is not dangerous. So that is the process of forming a microbiome that will be serving to this human being by the end of their life, right? So the microbiome is formed by the age of 3 years old. So 3 years old already have a set of the necessary bacteria in their gut to be able to live a life, So what happens when babies are not exposed to to that microflora, and they are not acquiring those bacteria from their mother. Well, actually, the studies have shown that babies that are born with a C-section have 30% more chances to get asthma than the babies are born naturally. And also, all kinds of autoimmune diseases happens when the babies are not born through the birth canal, and also when they are not fed with the breast. So this is a huge information to know. And I mean, you like it's our responsibility to educate ourselves and then make a decision from there, right? So I think it's important for me to tell you this. So what else? So as I said that the babies get it if they were not if they're born through C-section, so they have higher rates of asthma and different kinds of autoimmune diseases. And now we already know that autism also linked to this. So what happens what happens then after, right? And as you notice, we have such a huge rise of autoimmune diseases right now. It's basically the chronic diseases. All of the chronic diseases of 21st century are autoimmune based, and it got a lot to do with what we eat, how do we give a birth to our babies, and how do we feed our babies. So it has a huge impact on our health. And the reason why is that because immune cells, 70% of immune system located in the gut lining. So gut microbiome and our immune system are like the best friends, because the immune system cells are actually training on those microbes that are living inside of us, and so that they can properly recognize what is food, what is virus, what is like foreign objects that they need to fight. And so consider this: if you have a healthy, happy gut, then you have a strong immune system, so then you don't get sick that easily. And that was true to me. That's what happened to me. I was getting sick left and right with infections before, and when I start focusing on my gut, I just feel happier, healthier, and I don't pick any bacteria or infections that quickly anymore, because my gut can actually promote that health, even if so the key is for us to have as much diversity in our gut as possible. By diversity, I mean consuming as many different kinds of foods as possible, so that we can bring those bacteria and live inside of our gut, or maybe they're just bypassers. But anyway, they interact with our microbiome inside of us. And so the more diversity we expose to, the better for our immune system. This is as I said, this is our day training center. So what factors have a huge impact on microbiome? Well, first one is stress. Stress can kill the good strains of our bacteria, that's for sure. And basically stress can alter that microbiome ratio. If someone who's stressed a lot at work, or you have acute stress or chronic stress, doesn't matter, it is alter the microbiome. Another big one is that we actually have exposed to here in the United States more than necessarily, more often than it's necessarily, is the medications. And by medication, I actually mean most of it is antibiotics. So antibiotics are also a bacteria, but a certain kind that comes to the gut and kills everything. It's like, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it kills everything. So then after we took the the course of antibiotics, it is important to take probiotics after to ensure that you bring that a good strains of bacteria to live inside of your gut. Because if you don't, guess who's going to be living there first and multiplying is pathogen bacteria. And so this one is important thing to understand is that we need both. We need beneficial bacteria and we need pathogens as well, because the way how they live inside of our gut, the way how they interact with each other it's all makes sense, you know. It's basically the same as we look at the person as a planet, similar to Earth. And that if you look closer, you can see that there's cities and there's people living in the cities, and there's certain rhythm of life and there's certain way of living, right? And so we also interact with each other. We go to the grocery shop to get a grocery. We get to the car shop to get a cars, you know. So we have all this different routines. So I believe it's the same for gut. Like the pathogen bacteria needed to be there for some reason for beneficial bacteria to thrive, but it has to be a balanced ratio. So ratio has to be beneficial bacteria has to be much more in higher rate than the pathogen bacteria, because if happens otherwise, and this is what we see almost at every person here today, especially those who follow a standard American diet, is that there's not enough fiber consumption, and so that there is no enough food for good bacteria to eat, because good bacteria cannot eat burgers and they cannot eat refined sugars or refined carbs or stuff like this. This actually has been already like transformed to the energy, and so they don't have anything to eat, or the pieces that are came to the big intestine are actually like food for more food for pathogen bacteria, because especially candida is tend to love those kind of foods. And if you have overgrowth of pathogen bacteria, well, then we have a problem here, because we have this gut brain connection, and brain is always listen, you know, because brain is not something that controls everything. Brains actually is the control center, because it's through the endocrine systems and neurons and all that. They are actually like messengers, right? And so they bring the information to the brain, and then brain decides what to do with that. So when gut calls to the brain and say, hey, we want French fries and burgers and drink it with Coke, brain listens, because if gut calls, then it means that it's really important, and so we start having cravings. But it's actually not us who having those cravings, it's our bacteria that living in our gut is controlling that craving. Isn't that crazy? And so what happens is that if I would give you just one advice today that you can start using today, is to eat more fiber. And by fiber also I mean the what is it called? Prebiotics. Prebiotics. So we have probiotics, which means pro-life, and this is actual bacteria and the microorganisms, and because there are different ones, the different strains of bacteria, yeast and stuff. Prebiotics, it's the food for probiotics. So a little bit confusing, but yeah, there's a difference between them two. And so prebiotics are found in vegetables most of the times. It's like Jerusalem artichokes are really high in prebiotics. Then cruciferous veggies, onions, garlic, celery, all of these like very fibrous foods are the food for our gut bacteria. And also what happens there is that the fiber then later on turned into the butyrate, which is an extremely important fat for our body, because we are only consuming 30% of the fats that we need for our body, and 70% is actually created by bacteria in our gut. It is also true for many vitamins and the vitamins and the minerals, because bacteria, that beneficial bacteria, has this ability to turn food into the vitamins. So this is extremely important to feed a certain kinds of bacteria. And by certain kinds, I mean there's a whole bunch of different strains of it, but it has to be beneficial bacteria, because if you always, I know it is important, like we hear this always, like it is important to listen to your body. It is important to listen to your body, yes, but if you sure that you have a balanced microbiome, if you're not sure, then it's probably your candida who's calling to your brain and wants those foods. So think about that. So as I told you, if I would give you just one advice, eat prebiotic foods. Eat more vegetables, eat more fiber, because those are good for that hard-working bacteria in our gut that making a huge impact on our health. And as Hippocrates, I think, said 2,000 years ago, that all the diseases begins in gut, and it is true. Today we are just beginning to realize that, but I'm glad that we do. All right, so what other things that can affect your microbiome besides stress and medications is that a diet, as I said, right? So if you eat more refined carbs or refined sugars, it's the food for pathogen bacteria. So that's why you need to make sure that you eat more fiber. So this brings the food to our good bacteria, right? So also what have a huge impact on the bacteria strains that we have inside of us is geography. It matters where we're from. It makes sense that if you, for example, someone who is born in the United States and then you travel to India and then you have a food poisoning because you haven't been exposed to that kinds of bacteria that living in there. And so your immune system doesn't know what to do with that. And so that is why it is so important to have diversity in the gut bacteria. So the more different foods you actually eat, and the more your gut knows what to do with that food, and also the more different bacteria is living in your gut, so that when, let's say, you have a balanced microbiome and then some pathogen bacteria enters with food, so imagine how long it takes for brain to get that signal that something is wrong in our gut. And the brain is really busy, you know? So what happens is that the brain can get that information too late. And so the pathogen bacteria already multiplied, and it multiplies really quickly. So if, in this case, if you have a very balanced microbiome, you have much more beneficial bacteria living inside than pathogens. So when this pathogen bacteria enters, so those beneficial bacteria will attack it. And so they will make sure that this is not gonna grow. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that unbelievably cool? So yeah, it makes sense that we're living in the different parts of the world. We have a different strains of bacteria in there. And actually I was reading about this fun experiment that American scientists decided to make just for fun. They were exploring bacteria living inside of the navel, I think, and they found some crazy things. Is like one guy had this strains of bacteria that only live off the Japanese shores, you know, so, and he was never been in Japan, and he had never been exposed to any of those like foods. And it was so funny. And then they realized, like later on, they realized that the bacteria actually travels by air. So you don't even have to be in certain parts of the world to be exposed to that bacteria anymore, because the bacteria actually travels by air, and so you can breathe it in. That's funny. So also the lifestyle stages are important. So the microbiome of a baby is not the same as the microbiome of 5 years old, and same true for adult, and the same true is for the elderly. So all of the different stages of life affects us. And also we have hormones, right? And we have the periods of life, and it is also have a huge impact on our microbiome. And also it's true the other way, is that if we have some certain issues in our gut, it is affecting the hormones. So what else? Oh, as I said, the birthing process, right? So the way you've been born, it is also important for the set of bacteria you have, because if you, for example, someone who has been born with C-section, then you're not exposed to that birth canal of your mother, and so you're not acquiring that necessary microbes and bacteria for yourself. And even if you do, then it is important what kind of microbiome your mother had, because she is passing you on something that is going to help you or make it worse for you. And so for everybody who's pregnant out there, this is my advice to you: take care of your gut, because this is what you're gonna pass on to your baby. So it is all like, even if you're born through the birth canal, it's important what kind of microbiome had your mother. And also if you're born with a C-section, so then you get to get those microbes that have been on nurses' hands and the doctor's hands, and that table that you've been put on. So and we know that hospitals are not the most not the most sterile place to be, and so it is important to see what is it like. Well, it could be anything, so I don't want to go too deep on that, but you get the point, right? So because in the beginning I told you that microbiome is such a huge topic right now in the medicine society, and everybody started like looking at it with a different perspective, because gut health like 10 years ago, it was not even a thing. Like you have this like constant bloating or constant gases or other like irritations of your stomach, and you've been having like, let's say, this for a while, and you believe that this is normal, but it's not normal. But I remember myself, I've been suffering with bloating all the time. And I remember myself that I didn't even have a thought that something can be wrong with my gut. And now we start realizing this, is that bloating is just a signal from our body that is something is going wrong. But this something can be actually such a huge underlying issue. It's just a little whisper from your body. It's like, hey, pay attention. But if you don't listen, it just gets louder, and then you can get a chronic disease. And there is some chronic diseases that are like irritable bowel syndrome, right? That are actually in the gut, but they already passed that stage, and they were like already needs to be treated. So it is important to listen to your body, and it is important to take care of the bloating, because it's the stage where we actually can take care of it, but then it can be already too late. So that's what say is that, so because it's such a huge topic right now, there's these companies that offer microbiome stool samples. So basically you just have to get the kit, and they will send it to you by mail, and then you put your stool in the little what do you call this? So you send it back to them, and then they will take a look at it, and they will determine what kind of strains of bacteria do you have living in your gut, and so that you can alter probiotics intake based on that research. And most of the companies who does that is the companies who actually sell probiotics in pills. And so what they actually want you to believe is that, oh, okay, so we're gonna make it customized for you, for your unique body. But I want you to be mindful of that, is that we actually have microbes living all over our digestive tract, starting with our mouth and, finishing with the rectum. So what happens is that The stool sample is actually not given the entire information about what kinds of bacteria living in your gut, because you might be having some bacteria in your small intestine, but they just not get down there to be present in stool. So it's not really given the entire picture. And plus, it is a good way to make sure that you get in as much diversity in the strains as possible. And unfortunately, I don't believe in in one pill that can solve all of the problems. I do believe that probiotics pills are important and they need to be taken in course, and I believe that it's important to take right after you off the medications. But I also believe that it's not necessarily to take it for your whole life, because we have such an amazing natural way to get those foods, to get those through the food, and it's fermented foods. So if you would ask me what is one food that I can implement into my diet today to make it better for my gut, I'd say it's sauerkraut. I love sauerkraut because, first of all, because I'm from Russia and sauerkraut is a huge part of our culture. Because I remember my grandmother having those, like, they would preserve it for in November, I believe, and then we would eat it for entire winter all the way up to June when we have a new crops. So it was extremely important. Sauerkraut is actually unique, very simple to make, very simple product in general. It can only contain two things, a cabbage and salt in the right amount of it. But also it is not only probiotics, it is also prebiotics. So it's at the same time bacteria and the food for it. So it's just perfect, you know? Then also you can add some of the things like carrots in it or any other different spices. And so to make it a little tastier or maybe adjust it to your taste, I actually like it just as is, maybe a little bit of carrot, but I can make all different kinds of stuff and using the red cabbage and the kimchi, all of these amazing foods. But if you want a simple quick fix, get the sauerkraut. But if you don't want to make it yourself, get it in a trusted place or from trusted brand. Like one brand that I could recommend is Ozuke. I think they have it in Whole Foods, is because I've been watching an interview with creator of it, and she's actually very amazing. And I think her name is Mara King, and she's just very trustful person because she knows what she's talking about and she has a huge knowledge, so I believe her. And so even if you can't find Ozuke, or try to find some other brands and try to research them first, at least Google, you know. But also make sure that you buy your sauerkraut in glass jar, because actually those acids that are present in sauerkraut can leach the plastic. So make sure you don't buy plastic, because you're gonna have a microplastic all over your sauerkraut, and we don't want that, because actually plastic can affect our hormones, and that is true. So what other things to consider is that if you buy sauerkraut, then you have to make sure you buy it in glass and also from a refrigerated section, because if it's not in the refrigerated section, it's most likely that it has been pasteurized, and the pasteurization is actually kill all of the bacteria, so it's a dead product, and you don't want that. You're not going to get the benefits that you're looking for to get. So given all that, my advice to you is to make your own. It is extremely simple. It is maybe take you an hour to make, but you can make a big batch and it will last you like 4 months. And it only takes about 3 to 5 days to ferment, so you don't have to wait too long. And it's just it's just perfect, you know. So that's my recommendation to you today. So first of all, get your prebiotic foods, and second is sauerkraut. So I think I'm gonna be finishing here. It's been already around 35 minutes, and I think I told you everything I wanted to tell you today. So if you have any questions to me, you know how to reach me. You can comment under this video below, or send a private message, and we'll discuss this. But I also would like you to know that I offer online consultations on fermentation and classes as well. And I just had a kimchi class, as you saw the pictures. It was amazing time. I actually love seeing people live, you know, because I can give that energy and get that energy from people, and actually we can have more covered. But online consultations are a great way as well, because I can reach as many people out there. I'm not only in Los Angeles, anywhere in the world. So if you're someone who would like to learn how to make that sauerkraut, reach out to me and we'll talk about that. All right, so thank you so much for showing up today, and thank you so much for watching it all the way till the end. I'll see you next Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Be healthy, all right?